One day, you're getting a vote for AP Defensive Player of the Year somehow. The next day, you're no longer with the team. Life comes at you fast. Welcome, everybody, to JG9 News. We talk all things NFL all the time. I'm Jaguar, and I represent the 904 from the 602. And today, we are talking about Chargers linebacker Khalil Mack, 8-time Pro Bowler, all 2010s team. He is a possibility to get traded, according to ESPN's Jeremy Fowler, and he might not be on the Chargers next year. Said Fowler, according to his sources, multiple teams I've spoken to have an eye on Mack because he had the 17 sacks a year ago. Huge cap hit, and the Chargers can save $20+ million on their cap if they were to trade or move on. Maybe there's a trade possibility for a team in need of a pass rusher, and there will be many in that market around free agency. It makes sense for the Chargers, one of the worst teams in football last year. Even though Mack was a very good player last year, the Chargers have the fourth fewest cap space of any team in football. They are currently $25 million over the cap. If the Chargers trade Mack before March 15th, they can save over $23 million. It would be a huge help to them in terms of what they could do this offseason. Now, Khalil Mack coming off of one of the best years of his career from a statistics standpoint. 17 sacks, that was the fourth most in football. It was a career high for him. Somehow he even got a vote for AP Defensive Player of the Year. I'm not sure how exactly that worked out. I don't know how Khalil Mack got a vote, but Josh Allen didn't. Not that any of them definitely deserved a vote, but at the same time, Khalil Mack getting a vote for Defensive Player of the Year. Very good season for him. First double-digit sack season for him since 2018. Now, Mack is in his mid-30s, and he is a free agent after the 2024 season. It doesn't make a whole lot of sense for the Chargers to necessarily keep him on because he will just leave in free agency after the year is done. You need a team with cap space that is also in win-now mode if you're going to execute this trade. So a team like the New England Patriots, they have $77 million in cap space, but it would make no sense whatsoever for the Chargers to trade him to the Pats, even though the Pats have cap space, because why would you give up capital for what could be a one-year rental? So you need a team that's in win-now mode, that needs a pass rusher, and that has the cap space to pull this off. And with that in mind, with Khalil Mack likely not being on the Chargers to start off 2024, I've got 3 trade possibilities in terms of teams that could be interested in Khalil Mack's services, which would likely cost a round 3 pick, maybe a round 2 pick. In all likelihood, you're looking at a round 3 pick with a round 6 pick attached onto it, or something along those lines. Maybe a pick swap with rounds 5 and 6. And before anyone asks, because I feel like a lot of people are going to ask this question, would you want to have Khalil Mack on the Jacksonville Jaguars? At that price point, absolutely not. The Jags have a lot of needs this season as it is. You think you got to bring back Calvin Ridley. You got to re-sign Josh Allen, who was better than Khalil Mack. And Allen, I hope he comes back. I don't know what Trent Baalke's going to do. The fact they didn't talk to him before, I have no clue what's happening with Josh Allen, but that is way more of a priority. You're not going to have the money to bring in Khalil Mack. It just wouldn't make a whole lot of sense to bring on Mack considering the circumstances. So for those wondering, no, the Jaguars are not one of the teams I have in mind. It would be a less than 1% chance that he winds up in Jacksonville, and considering everything else that the Jags have to do this offseason, and considering the lack of cap space that they have compared to some of these other teams on the list, no, Khalil Mack, not a Jaguar. One of those teams being the Houston Texans. Now, this has a big asterisk next to it because it depends on what happens with Jonathan Grenard. Jonathan Grenard, very good player last year, 12.5 sacks, best year of his career, very good pass rusher for Houston. He was a menace all season long, but he is set to hit free agency. Now, the Texans have plenty of cap space to re-sign him. That's not an issue whatsoever. The Texans have $67.5 million in cap space as things stand. But if Grenard commands way more on the open market than the Texans might think or might be willing to pay, maybe some team offers him $20 million a year, a 4-year, $80 million contract, and the Texans don't feel comfortable doing that, especially because you have Will Anderson and you have some good pass rushers on that team. They might think otherwise, and they might trade for Khalil Mack. It works perfectly for them if they were to do that. You get a premier pass rusher to pair alongside Will Anderson, who was great last season, defensive rookie of the year, and rightfully so. And you're not devoting too much cap space to the pass rusher spot because Anderson is on a rookie deal as it is. But again, Khalil Mack to the Texans, that is on the contingency that Jonathan Grenard does not come back. If he does come back, I'd be very surprised. if Mack goes to the Texans, just because the amount of money devoted to front seven would be a lot. Now, the other team that you could think of, number 2, the Los Angeles Rams. They were in the bottom half of the NFL in sacks. They had 41, and in quarterback hits with 91. We've seen before the Rams front office, Sean McVay, we've seen them try to acquire veteran players when they are in win-now mode. Now, I'm not sure the Rams are necessarily in win-now mode, but they are a very good team, as we saw the second half of 2023, and they made the playoffs as well. No one on the Rams last season had double-digit sacks. The Rams also have $40 million in cap space to work with, and they have way more draft picks than they usually have in the first 2 days. So the Rams could potentially be an option for Khalil Mack's services, considering their pass rush was not the best last year, and considering the fact that they have a history getting veteran defenders if need be. We saw with Jalen Ramsey, we saw with Von Miller, just to name a few. The other team that's very interesting, that would have to do a bit of maneuvering. It's not like the Texans and the Rams where they have the cap space to pull it off right now, but the Green Bay Packers could be an interesting possibility for Khalil Mack's services. David Bakhtiari's contract in particular, they would have to do some maneuvering with that. Aaron Jones could be a possible cap cut as it is, but the Packers were in the middle of the pack in every metric pass rush-wise, and they had no one on the team with double-digit sacks. Mack is an expiring contract. You're not going to get too many more chances to make a splash like this one once you have to pay Jordan Love. So you think, okay, you can sign Khalil Mack this year, make a trade for him. You improve the defense, which was struggling last year. Granted, a lot of that might have had to do with Joe Barry as defensive coordinator, who is no longer there, thank goodness, if you're a Packer fan. But the Packers have the draft capital to make this enticing. They have 10 draft picks, 5 of them coming in the first 3 rounds. So you absolutely have the capital to give them a pick or two and not really lose anything in the grand scheme of things. Again, you have to manipulate the cap just a little bit. You have to maybe cut a few guys here and there. But for a guy like Khalil Mack, who had 17 sacks last year, what would be a 1-year rental deal, maybe even 2 years if you franchise him after the 2024 season, and then you pay Jordan Love, it becomes an interesting situation to improve a defense and a team that might be in win-now mode and ahead of expectations, considering the fact of where they were at the start of the 2023 season, or even in the middle of the 2023 season. Either way, Khalil Mack likely not going to be a member of the Los Angeles Chargers next year due to the cap hit that he commands, and if Jeremy Fowler's sources are correct, and he is usually a very good and very reliable reporter, then you can expect Mack on a different uniform in 2024. But what are your thoughts on Khalil Mack? Do you think he's going to be a Charger next year? And if so, or if you don't think he's going to be a Charger, I should say, what team do you think he's going to wind up on? Let me know in the comments down below. Would you trade for Khalil Mack? How would you rate Khalil Mack? Do you think he's a Hall of Famer? Let me know everything in the comments down below. And that's going to do it for this episode of JG9 News. Be sure you like and subscribe. It helps the channel out a lot. And be sure to check out my main channel, Jaguar9, where we talk all things NFL history all the time. Until next time, this is Jaguar9 signing off. And as always, go Jags.